Awesome. Is that all up on your screen now?
Yeah, everything's good.
Okay, fantastic. How did you find this this paper?
It went pretty well. A few questions, mainly in two areas that I had problems with. If we could please go over that government kind of counts and stuff.
Yep.
And I'm not entirely, I'm not 100% confident with comparative and absolute advantage, like the difference between the two and how you would find it. Like, I understand the trade stuff, but not necessarily kind of the difference between those two.
Quite a macro-orientated data there then. How about we go through the paper, and if we bump into one of the questions based on that, we'll do it.
Yep, that's perfect.
Otherwise, we'll just drop it in. Okay. And so for the rest of the paper, that all went fine.
Yeah, everything else went perfectly fine.
Have a look. So this diagram shows production possibility curve for an economy that produces only two goods. What did you think about this one?
I just did it immediately by, there's like a 1-to-2 ratio between good Y and X. So you're producing 1,200, then you're giving up 600 of good Y.
Yep. And so you're going to get answer B then. And what kind of possibility frontier do we see here? If you want to describe it.
Where factor mobility is perfect.
Yeah, very good. And this is one of the key assumptions of which theory?
I do not know, sorry.
So so what we'll be covering in more detail after is comparative and absolute advantage. Both of those are predicated on almost perfect factor mobility. And I'll show you why that's so important later. Okay, Hong Kong. Housing project, shortage of workers. Which economic concepts are illustrated in this information?
Okay, so 2A is not right because it says market economy, whereas it says other public sector projects.
Yeah.
And then it says economic planning and price mechanism. There's no it's not price mechanism because there were shortage where it's needed in other public sectors. So I didn't take B. I said C just seemed to be right for me because of opportunity cost of labor, yes, because they were needed in other sector projects.
Yep.
And excess demand is true as well.
How do you know that?
Because only complete 8,900 of the 1,500 planned. So it's kind of saying
15,000.
that 15,000, sorry, that they were hoping to make 15,000 to, I guess, how to put it, to supply everyone with a house, but then they never managed it, which means that there's excess demand.
Yeah, I mean, the really key thing you can see there's the waiting time for public sector housing. That implies that there's people who want a house and don't have one at the moment.
Yeah.
You could make an argument that your answer is completely right, but you can make an argument that, they're just building houses to plan ahead for the future, and at the moment there is an excess demand. But because there's a waiting time, there are people who are wanting houses at the moment. And how do you know it's not something to do with production possibilities and budget deficits?
Budget deficit is just not because of a shortage of workers, one. It just says that because there was a shortage of workers.
Yeah. Rather than the issue paying them, right?
And then production possibility, it's that I would associate that if they said that there was like a reduced amount of work, shortage of workers because they left or something. But then they were needed elsewhere, which means that they just stopped building houses and they moved somewhere else.
Yeah, so the PPF is constantly just moving our X to a different axes.
Yep.
Okay, what is most likely to be a distinguishing feature of the healthcare system of a mixed economy?
C, government-owned and privately owned hospitals.
Okay. Why that over a mixture of specialist and general hospitals?
Because a mixed economy says that is basically when both government and private own both of them, and then the specialist and general, you have that in either if it's completely in a market economy where a private single firm could make both specialist and general hospitals.
Yeah, very good. And yeah, mixed has nothing to do with where the staff are coming from and who owns the hospital. It's about government and private sector, isn't it? Okay, an economy can only produce two goods at one time. These are goods X and one other good from A, B, C, or D. Each output fully employed. Which good must be produced with X to show production possibility curve with increasing costs? Okay, this is quite a tricky question.
A is out of the picture because it's actually decreasing. It's just no cost as you increase production. It's in fact the reverse.
Yeah.
But B, it's decreasing costs because it's 40, 30, 20. C is constant cost because it's 30 throughout, and then D is your answer because it's 20, 30, 40. That increases as you produce.
Absolutely. And what could not cause a shift in an individual's demand curve for good X? So quick question. So we see two types of changes in demand curves, between movements and shifts. What is the difference between the two?
Movement is always with price, and a shift is any other factor.
Sorry?
Pardon?
Sorry, a movement to do with price and
shift is any other factor except for price.
Okay, so let's have a look. What do you think?
So I would say D.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Change in price.
6. It is most likely to increase the quantity of houses supplied.
Okay. A is possible.
Okay.
B, a restriction level of B is not, because that's basically a maximum price. That is not true.
Yeah. What's that going to do to supply and demand?
It's going to cause excess demand.
Yep.
For C, and therefore, because excess demand, because equilibrium changes and things. C, a rise in tax, not true, because quantity will reduce, supply curve will shift to the left. D, removal of subsidy to house builders, same thing, shifts to the left, so A.
Very good. And how is that going to help the supply of housing increase? Surely that would just help demand increase.
Because then the equilibrium shifts to the right, which is more quantity.
Okay. Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah, it is.
In which situations the demand for a product has to be price elastic?
Okay. Elastic. Let's see. It's going to be A.
A fall in price increased expenditure on the product. That's a very normal statement, isn't it? All the others are making further assumptions, which we don't necessarily.
Yeah.
Not so sure about. Are there any goods where we might see a rise in price leading to more demanded?
Inelastic.
A rise in price increased expenditure on the product, and inelastic. What
inelastic.
about
price is elastic?
What about a rise in price causes a higher quantity demanded?
A rise in price. That's I forgot what it's called, but it's those abnormal goods where they associate price with like the quality of the good.
Yep. We can call them Veblen goods.
Oh, okay. I have to remember that. Okay.
And there's also another type of good, Giffen goods, although they're even more difficult to find empirically. So Giffen goods are when incomes are so low that an increase in the price of a necessity means that the people end up spending their entire income on it because they can't afford to buy anything else.
Oh, wow.
So an example of that is during the Irish potato famine. Basically, most people in Ireland bought potatoes, and then with any spare money they had left, they would buy some meat. But during the Irish potato famine, the price of potatoes skyrocketed. So the very poorest people in Ireland couldn't afford meat anymore, but they still needed to get their calories in, so they just ended up spending their entire income on more potatoes because they couldn't afford meat anyway. So in some very, very, very weird economic circumstances, you can get positive price elasticity. And they're called Giffen goods, identified by economist Giffen, whereas where the Veblen goods were identified by Thorsten Veblen. Okay, goods X and Y are complements with a cross elasticity of demand of minus 0.8. Then a maths question. What did you think?
Okay. So 2,000 to 2,800. Sorry, I'm just doing this from my head. 800 over 2,000. 205, 40%. 40%. That means that divide that by 0.8, 50. New price is $5 because 50% of 10 is $5. And
Very good.
10 minus 5 is 5.
Oh, I agree. The diagram shows an industry's total revenue when different quantities are demanded. Okay.
This is going back to that same question with that revenue thing. Okay. So point 1 is as quantity demand increases, revenue increases as well. So that means that as revenue increases, quantity demanded. That means that it's elastic. Point 3 is the opposite, inelastic, and point 2 is, so it's B.
Very good. And how do you know the PD is 1 and not 0 at that point 2?
Because if PED is 0, that means that quantity demand is static. So
yeah, not static. It's just the price change has no effect on
the quantity demanded. Yeah.
Yep.
So how would they put it on that graph? You would just have a straight line, right?
Okay, so then it would just be a vertically horizontal, not horizontal, sort of just an angled line based like this going up. Because then if price doesn't change with quantity, then every extra unit you sell is the same total revenue. So you just have that line continue on forever.
Okay.
What would increase the price elasticity of supply of a firm's products?
A would decrease it. B would increase it. But we'll keep that aside. Increase in cost decreases it. Increase in level of employment, that also decreases it. So B.
Why not D?
Increase in the employment of the area means that there are fewer people unemployed. So if they want to employ more people immediately, it's much harder.
Very good.
So it reduces the elasticity of supply. Price elasticity.
Very good. And an increase in the cost of capital goods?
Then if they want to buy like more machinery, all of a sudden then they can't.
Higher barriers to entry. Could
yeah. Oh yeah, there's even new firms.
And yeah, therefore it's got to be a decrease in the time that it takes to produce the products. So 11 shows the brand for a luxury brand of smartphones. How do we define a luxury good?
Luxury good. I don't know.
The luxury goods have some characteristics in terms of elasticity. What do you think? Do you think it's going to be in terms of price elasticity?
The price inelastic?
They're actually relatively price elastic. Oh, sorry. I'm talking about income elasticity.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Elasticity, then they're extremely elastic.
Yeah, very good.
Okay.
Sorry, got mixed up there. The initial equilibrium is at point X. Whereas, what's the opposite of luxury good?
Inferior?
An inferior good, very good, yeah.
Okay. So luxury is the same as normal. Oh no, sorry, no, it's more than, okay. Never mind, sorry, I got my head.
Yeah, okay. Okay, what will be the new equilibrium following a rise in the price of batteries used and the manufacturer was and a rise in consumer incomes? What did you think for this?
Okay, so rise in the price of batteries, that's the rise in the price of production, so the supply curve will shift to the left. So your options are A and D right now.
Yep.
And then rise in consumer incomes, then because it's elastic, it'll go to D. It'll go to, A, sorry. It'll shift to the right.
It'll go to A, so we get a much higher price.
Yeah. If it was like an inferior good, then it would go to D, correct?
That would lead to, so rising the price of batteries is still going to shift supply, and a rising consumer incomes, yeah, so it would go down to D. Very good. When will it not be possible to use price as a rationing mechanism?
So I said that when the demand for a good is infinitely inelastic.
Okay, why?
Because if it's infinitely inelastic, then the quantity demanded is the exact same.
Yep.
So you can't ration between where those supplies, who they go to, because everyone wants them.
Yeah. It doesn't, like, even if you change the prices, people are still going to want them anyway, right? Well, so this is one of the kind of functions of the price mechanism, right? The rationing. What are the other functions? Do you know what they
are? Rationing, would it be to I don't know if this still falls under rationing, but like resource allocation.
Okay, what's that about?
Like if there's increase in price for a certain good, then there's an increase in price because of market economy. It's profit motivated.
Yeah. So we divert more of our scarce resources into this industry, right?
Yeah, to make as many things as possible, and then to make as much profit as possible.
Yeah. So I think you're kind of talking about two ideas here. You're talking about the rationing function, which is, saying, okay, the price of that is falling, so let's move resources away from that to this thing where the price is higher.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the transmission of preferences. So it's sending kind of information to producers about the changing needs and wants. And then higher prices acts as an incentive, and that gives them more profit, that kind of thing. And that means we don't need kind of a single body to decide who's going to produce what and in what quantities. It's decentralized. All this information is transmitted through the price mechanism. So info transmission, but then also a signaling function. And that's really where we tell how we know where resources are required and where they are not. They all sound kind of the same, but like signaling is about excess supply, excess demand. Transmission is about how changing consumer tastes, that information gets sent to producers. And then rationing is actually how we make the decision to change between producing one thing or another thing and how we divert those resources.
Okay, understood.
And yeah, this one was about the rationing mechanism. Okay, a government imposes an indirect tax on a product with normal demand and supply curves. The tax rate is 100 million. Okay, what do you think?
The value of the combined consumer surplus and producer surplus. Indirect tax. I would say 13D.
Why?
Because A, it's not true. B is not true.
How do you know it's not B?
How it's not B? Because I don't know how to put it. I kind of just drew a graph and then worked it from there.
Okay, what kind of what would the graph look like?
Just the normal ones, like the two intersections.
And then?
X kind of a shape, sorry.
Yep, and then?
It's
Get this pulled up. Probably draw that in here. Okay, so you're telling me just a normal X diagram, any boom, demand, supply, and what happens now?
Indirect tax, so the supply goes to the left or up.
Okay.
View it. And then That's basically it.
How do we know how consumer and producer surplus is affected?
Okay, so consumer is the first intersection, so the first curve that you drew, that to the top, the area between that, and then producer is to the bottom.
Okay, yeah, so we certainly know that we've lost this bit, right? The consumers have lost that.
Yep.
And what have the producers gained or lost?
They lost the curve, like where it intersects next, like.
So now they are operating at that quantity, but that's all tax. So is it from here or what shape let's do where they were on before. A bit easier. Like that. Yeah, so you can see that their initial surplus was, all of this area. And what is it going to be now? So we get this
It's going to
quantity.
be that's that price. It's going to go that line right diagonally till it intersects the axis.
This one?
The price, yeah,
Here? So this whole triangle.
is what they lost. No,
Okay,
is
this
what
whole
they currently have. That's what they currently have, and then that black triangle to the right is what they lost. No, wait, no, that doesn't make sense.
So some of this will go to the government, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. It's until that yellow. Well, that orange.
So from here to
No, but you don't start there. Go below.
there.
Stop there, yeah, and then that triangle.
Triangle. Is what they have
Yeah.
now. So they've
And then what
lost
they
this.
lost is that tiny bit, yeah. Or that huge bit.
And how much is tax revenue?
Tax revenue would be the price increase times by the quantity difference, the new quantity. So that would be the top yellow to the bottom yellow and then multiplied.
So from this point.
Straight down.
From this point straight down.
Oh no, you missed it. So the previous equilibrium, sorry.
Oh, so just this here?
Yeah, that's the tax revenue.
Okay, and then this box like that.
Yeah.
So we know that the total tax revenue is going to be the amount of the tax times the quantity sold, right?
Yeah.
You've identified the quantity sold, but the amount of the tax this entire height, isn't it? Because that's why the supply shifted up by that much.
Oh yeah. Sorry, my bad.
So let's have another think about how would this tax revenue work? Let's simplify our diagram a little bit, go rid of some of these lines. Okay, so this is the new quantity. We've established that. We know this is the amount of the tax. So this is going to be the tax revenue.
Yeah.
And so then if that is all tax revenue, where do you think the producer surplus is going to be?
The bottom left triangle.
5 plus tax. So this triangle here?
That's the new producer surplus.
It's actually this entire triangle here. I'm not sure if that's what you meant, but this is the producer surplus, the new producer surplus. This triangle here.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we have this is the producer surplus, and which means that they've lost. I'm not drawing very carefully. So they've lost this area here, right? Consumers have lost that top bit, but this is now tax revenue, so that's all right. Which means that overall deadweight welfare loss is only this little triangle here.
That triangle on the right.
Yeah.
So that's why it's 100.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you have to remember. And this is always, as long as you have normal supply and demand curves, that is always going to be a deadweight loss triangle. So the tax revenue is never going to be bigger than the producer and consumer surplus loss added together. Okay?
Yep. Good with me.
Cool. So that's really how you can demonstrate graphically that no matter how you draw those supply and demand curves, there's always going to be that deadweight welfare loss triangle. So you know that total surplus is going to fall by more than how much the tax raises. Happy with that?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, they're quite tricky diagram thinking all those surpluses and stuff, but yeah, got there. Cool. In the diagram D is the demand curve of an agricultural commodity, and S is the initial supply curve. Okay, what did you think for this one?
This is really easy.
Yep.
So original was 8,000.
Yep.
So because 4 times 2, I just took 8. So 8, and then so S1 and S4 are the ones where they are under.
Mm.
That's 5,000, 5. So then C is your answer, 6.
C is your answer, 6,000, absolutely. Question 15.
Okay, so I wasn't 100% sure about this one.
Okay.
So, but my answer would be A.
Okay, A, let's have a look. So the supply and demand curves for the supply and demand curves of a commodity. A government subsidy causes the supply curve to shift from S1 to S2. Which area measures the difference between the cost to the economy of producing the resultant increase in output and the value consumers place on this increase in output? Okay, why did you think it was A?
Because the cost to the economy would be A, B, C, and D. Is it? Sorry, no, it would be A and B. No, wait.
What do you mean by the cost to the economy?
To increase the cost to the producer of producing it and
Okay.
to the government as well.
Okay, so everyone all added together, right?
Yeah.
So if we just ignore S2 for a moment and we're just operating on the S1 curve, what is the cost of the economy of producing the Q1?
Q1, then it would be the original price and then Q1.
Okay, so that whole box, right?
Yeah.
And now suddenly the quantity
that's kind of where I'm confusing myself, because they don't really sell at the cost price.
Okay, you should hope that they make some profit, right?
Yeah. So that's where I'm kind of lost and confused.
Um, I think the best way to look at this question is to say, it's something like a commodity, so it's probably a relatively competitive market. And this is also the market overall rather than a single company.
Okay.
So when we're looking like this, we're not saying, oh, this is the cost of making it, and then they add on a little bit of profit, in sort of a competitive market, just normal profits. Difference between normal profits and zero profits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, you're right. It'd be P times Q1, and then that changes. What does that change to?
Pardon? Straight out. Hello?
Yeah, sorry, what does that change to when you then bring in the S2 curve?
It goes to the price drops and the quantity increases, so it goes down. I don't know how to explain it. Sorry.
Okay. What would be the total cost to the economy of producing that much? So we know that there's going to be some cost to the government and some cost to the producers, right?
Yeah.
What would be the cost to the government of this entire subsidy?
Cost to the government would be A and B, the increase in the price multiplied by the quantity. And then so it goes straight.
But not just A and B, right? This whole shape here.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yep.
And we know that that we were operating at this kind of cost before. But now we have to, obviously now we have the total cost to the government plus the cost to the producers.
Yeah.
But then we also get more value to consumers placing on this increase in output. How could we measure that?
You do the the demand times the quantity. So previously it was P and Q1,
Very good.
and then now it's going to be the quantity 2,
Yep.
where it intersects with the price. So then that takes out C and D. That's not a difference. And then
Yep.
I don't know why B goes out. That's kind of where I'm a little
Okay, so you're trying to find the difference between the added cost, right? And then the value of the consumers placing this increase in output, right? So the value that they place in the increase in output is just this shape. It's just they got this much value before. We're looking at their consumer surplus, and now they're getting this much value.
Yep.
Then that quantity increases, so that's the added amount that you get. But then this is all tax revenue anyway, so then the difference is just this A shape.
Ah, okay, makes sense.
Because of, sorry, not tax revenue, tax subsidy. The cost of the government of doing that is going to be B as well if you look at the shape. Do you see?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do.
$16. Okay, now more into the macro kind of stuff. What is a transfer payment?
That's when you have that's when you do uh I know what goes inside, like things like pensions would go inside where they don't really bring any value to the economy, kind of a thing.
Pensions don't bring any value to the economy.
No,
Um,
sorry, it's not for a trade, it's not a trade kind of a thing.
So often there's basically two, if you want to really generalize, there's two types of government spending, right? Either you can spend on building new hospitals and new roads, or you can
Yeah,
just give people money, right?
yeah.
So you
It's
could
like
talk
you
about,
don't get any goods or services in exchange.
yeah, exactly. It's just you're moving money from one person to the other, not in exchange for goods and services. Absolutely well explained. Um, so yeah, what was the total amount spent on transfer payments?
I said C because of pensions and social security welfare payments.
Okay, so you didn't include education.
I did not,
Why not?
because that is a good and a service. Well, it counts as kind of like a service.
Yeah, I mean, when you're paying teachers, yeah, you're transferring money to them, but they are providing a service, right?
Yeah.
So the 260 billion. Which government policy might limit the rationing function of the price mechanism?
I said 17D, the setting of minimum prices for milk,
Why?
because once you set a minimum price, that means that there's like excess supply.
Yep,
So that limits the rationing function. Like, where do all those people who supplied this extra amount, where do they take their milk to? That
yep,
kind of make.
very good. Which argument has often been used to justify the privatization of state enterprises? What is privatization?
Privatization is when previously public sectors, um, it's like when they sell state resources and assets and things.
Yeah, and can you give an example of when this has happened recently? That's right.
Uh, I honestly don't know because I am not from here, but I
Okay, well,
know.
it's worth reading about the Royal Mail, uh,
Okay.
which was privatized 2 years ago. That's like the main postal company that we have here. Um, and then after the financial crisis, many of the banks were at least partially nationalized, and now in recent years they've been privatized again, so their shares have been sold off. So for quite a bit of profit for the government, actually. because obviously buying up banks when they're about to go bankrupt in 2008 and then selling them once they're doing much better is not a bad way to make money if you're a government, but of course risky. Okay, so which could be used to justify privatization?
B. Private firms can produce the same outputs at lower unit costs.
Very good. And there's this idea that private firms are more efficient because they have to deal with the price mechanism, right? And if they're not efficient, they'll fail.
Yeah.
Whereas in the government companies,
and they want profit maximization, so they try to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah. Our government plans to increase spending on education and training every year. What do you think?
I said it would be C. I'm not so sure if this is right, but my reasoning would be that in the future that the labor is more productive, so LRAS will shift to the right, but because more productive, they'll probably get paid a higher salary or like higher wages. Therefore, aggregate demand would increase.
Yeah, you can take that more directly, right? Aggregate demand is D plus I plus G plus NX. If G increases, then AD increases.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not think of it that way. Awesome.
But I mean, your way works perfectly well as well. So, what shifts the LRAS and what shifts the SRAS?
LRAS is like the production possibility curve.
Yeah, exactly. So changes in the quantity or quality of the facts of production shift the LRAS or the PPF.
Yeah.
Whereas changes in the price of the facts of production change the SRS. So LRS is definitely shifting out right. So it's got to be it's got to be B or C. And then we also know there's going to be some increase in aggregate demand because of all this extra government spending. So C. Inflation in Botswana was 7.5%. Okay, what did you think for this question?
I said A, both of them decrease because interest is lower than inflation. So person's Y real value does decrease, but not as much as person X's.
Y person, Y less because they've got it in the bank account. Yep. Yeah. Very good. The graph shows the annual percentage change in the prices of services and in the prices of goods between 2007 and 2012. Okay.
I did see the average price of services was higher in 2012 than 2010.
How do you know this?
Average price, that's one, and it says annual price change, and the rest is like they take generalizations and assumptions.
Yeah. So, I mean, on the graph, services look slightly lower than in 2012 than 2010.
Oh, but it's always positive, so it's so there's always an increase in the price change. There's always an increase
price change rather than a nominal price, right?
So this is when you would call it disinflation, right?
Disinflation, yeah, very good. When we still have positive inflation, but it's reducing when it's going down. I think disflation rather than disinflation.
Okay.
The table shows items from the balance of payments for countries A, B, C, and D. What do you think about this one?
Okay, so balance of payments involves so I said it was D because just the
oh yeah, this is our balance of payments question, so that we can look into it.
Okay, so I did that because so greatest disequilibrium. It kind of, I don't know how to put it, threw me off because I don't understand what they mean by disequilibrium.
Okay, so this is really what the balance of payments is about. Just a really, really quick tangent back on the last question. You spoke about disinflation. Did you see the news reports on UK inflation which came out today?
I did not know.
Okay, so inflation plummeted. So it was 3% in January, And now the figure's been calculated for February, and it was 2.7%. So obviously the UK Bank of England targets 2%, right?
Yeah.
Because we've had such low inflation for a long time, they were fine overshooting it a little bit, to stimulate the economy. But it's now fallen again to 2.7%. So definitely in your exam, you're going to want to go in knowing all these figures for use in your essays. And yeah, it's very interesting to read about why that's happened and how that could affect the fact that most people assumed we'd be doing some rate rises soon, but that may not now happen, or might take longer. So the market's very happy with that. Okay, so the balance of payments. Let's get this. Let's do this quite a bit. This is quite a big topic. Okay.
Okay. Kind of like what I thought this equilibrium was. I don't know if it's true, but I thought it's like the furthest away from like zero.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
so then I just added up everything and just
no. So the balance of payments is it's sort of a big measure of all the financial transactions made between consumers and businesses and governments with one country to another. So it's not just going to be a matter of adding them all up.
Okay, so it won't be the three of them. Okay.
No, it wouldn't just be just adding them up. Okay. So it's basically a figure that tells us how successful our exporting companies are and how much that us consumers and firms are importing, right? And then we're going to talk about inflows and outflows. Okay. Inflow, and this is about foreign currencies. So we're going to inflows and outflows of foreign currencies.
Just to make sure we're on the same page, when I meant adding them all up, I meant like the final position of them.
Oh, sorry. How do you mean?
Like, let's say inflows was 5 million, outflows was 2 million. Then I said adding them up would be the 3, and then whatever else the other positions were. So like 44 plus 12 plus 25.
Okay. Yeah, but we can't exactly do that.
Okay.
To figure out the balance of payments. Okay, so there's going to be inflows and outflows of foreign currency. So, for example, if an investor in the UK buys shares in an American company, what happens in terms of currency flows?
Buying shares in
buy shares in an American currency.
In an American currency.
Sorry, in an American share in an American company. So I buy some Apple shares.
Then there would be outflows.
Outflows. Okay.
Yeah.
So outflows of foreign currency. I'm exchanging my pounds for these American shares. And then later, what might happen?
You might get your profit from that. Your dividend.
Exactly. The company could pay dividends, and then that's going to come as an inflow of foreign currency, right?
Yeah.
So the basic structure of the balance of payments is basically there's the current account, capital account, and on this side you've got the financial. Okay, so do you know what kind of stuff is included in the current account?
In the current account.
Yeah.
That would be all like for the goods and the services. Like, sorry.
Yeah.
Just trying to think. It's like the goods and the services.
Yeah.
And then the income and then the current transfers.
So we can describe goods as visible imports
and
services as invisible import or exports.
And then the net income from abroad.
Net income.
Yeah.
How do we describe this net income? Is there a technical term that you've learned for that?
I have not. I'm not sure if I should.
Okay, so it's net primary income. Oh, yeah, basically that.
Net primary income. Okay.
And what is that to do with?
That's
Interest.
That's like all the foreign. So if you have citizens working elsewhere, right? If you have citizens working elsewhere, then they bring money in.
Oh, so like remittances.
I have not heard that word.
Okay, so there's a strong, for example, Eastern European community who work in the UK, and they often work here, often sort of the men and women come here to work, and then they'll send money back to their families living in Lithuania and Poland and these countries in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
And this we describe as remittances. That's what that's called.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely right. That comes under net primary income. Okay. Let's go remittances. Okay, so interest, dividends, remittances, basically profits generated abroad from foreign investments, all that kind of money, just interest, profits, all that kind of money earned overseas. And also net secondary income. Any idea what that might be to do with?
I do not know.
So this is what the government does basically. So this is annual contributions to the EU. Contributions to you know how the UK contributes a lot to the EU budget.
Yeah.
Including things like aid overseas, development aid.
Ah, okay.
Military spending
would
overseas.
This go under like current transfers? Oh, they're like two different things.
I wouldn't describe it as a transfer, because they're kind of, you can get something in return, not your country, but it's for example, military spending abroad. So if you operate a military base in wherever, it's you can describe it as a transfer, but you're not directly transferring money. I mean, you are kind of, but because it's contributions to the EU budget, which a lot of them will get spent in the UK as well. I guess it's a bit like a transfer. Yeah, you can call it a transfer if you like, but I'd say if you stick with the terms which they use by the examiners use, net secondary income, then you're certainly going to be sure that it's correct. Okay. So these are three or four main things included there. Then we've got the capital account. Do you know what stuff comes under there?
Under the capital account, that will be like capital transfers. Yeah.
So transfers, and what kind of stuff do we include in this type of transfer? It's transfers of things like patents, so intellectual property, franchises. It's basically anything you can transfer which isn't something like a good or a service. So intellectual property, leases, a franchise, goodwill, contracts, that kind of stuff. When that gets moved overseas, that's under the capital account. Okay. And then that also includes transfers of ownership of fixed assets. So things like housing, that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yep.
And then we have financial account. Any idea what might come under there?
Financial accounts would be like direct investments.
Foreign direct investment, exactly. So give me, what is foreign direct investment?
What is
FDI?
When like a foreign company I don't know how to put it. Like when someone invests in the company, I actually don't have a proper definition for it.
Okay, well, it's basically a transfer of ownership, right?
Okay.
So there might be an asset or a company here in the UK. FDI is basically a foreign company, a foreign subsidiary of someone from another country buying up our assets. Okay? So there's going to be a transfer of a fixed asset. There's going to be something which happens in the capital account, and there's going to be some money which comes in. So it's any change of ownerships of financial assets and liabilities between UK residents and non-residents. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The FDI, then net balance portfolio flows. That's debt and equity, selling and buying shares, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then banking flows. That's when big banks move their money around, hot money, that kind of stuff.
Isn't there something like reserve assets or something? I
Okay.
don't know what it is, but I've just
If reserve assets.
that would be banking flows.
In terms of banking flows, yeah. I mean, what do you mean by reserve assets? I haven't heard that.
Um, okay, searching it up, it's like currency, commodities, other financial. Okay, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Other financial capital held by monetary authorities such as central banks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it would come under there, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we know that there's that all this has to balance out, so there's going to be some one last category, which is going to be net errors and omissions. And we talk about the balance of payments because it all balances out in the end. How do we think that we could make this stuff balance?
Pardon?
How do
How?
we think that we could make these four terms balance?
Um,
Because total, basically, whenever we buy currency for something, or we buy a good at a different currency, we give them our currency. All of this has to balance together because that's what the balance of payments is.
yeah.
And if you have a deficit, so the UK has a big deficit on the current account, right?
Uh-huh.
We import more stuff than we export. So that means that some other parts of the balance of trade, like some of the other accounts must then be in surplus. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we put current account on one side, that's all the visible trade in goods and services, all that kind of stuff. Net errors and omissions just kind of helps it balance towards the end. We put the financial accounts on this side. And we also put the capital account on this side. Okay?
Okay.
And then we can add them all up and subtract. Okay?
Yeah.
So now if we go back to our question, and basically the capital account is tiny. I mean, look at this. This is very, very small amounts of money, isn't it? It's current account and FDI, financial account, that'll give me really, really massive. And the net errors and omissions make sure it balances exactly. You can have a deficit on one of the accounts, but that's always going to mean a surplus on the other side. So, which country has the greatest disequilibrium on its balance of payments?
This is kind of where I'm lost. Like, how would you do this question?
Okay, so current account here is minus 41 million, right?
Yep.
What is the sum of the capital and the financial account?
41 as well.
41 as well, right? So
Yeah.
that's perfectly in equilibrium. Okay.
Uh-huh.
What about country B?
Country B,
Yeah.
current account is 32, but capital and financial is minus 42.
Okay.
That is not in equilibrium.
That is not in equilibrium. What about country C?
Country C is not in equilibrium either, minus 15 and minus 13.
Minus 15 and minus 13.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about country D?
44 and 37.
Okay. So which of these countries is in the greatest disequilibrium on its balance of payments?
I said D, but you said adding them all up is not the correct way to do it.
Hmm.
So I am not sure which one would it be. Like I don't know which one is correct. Which way is the correct way then?
Okay. Let's have a look. So still up. I'm getting a bit confused as well now, sorry. Okay, current account, those two. Then you have to add those up to check the balance. So yeah, that balances out. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so we're just adding up these two accounts and then comparing it to see if there's some disequilibrium, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So let's start country A. Minus 41 on the current account, plus 41 on the capital and financial account, right?
That's zero. No.
Yeah. So that balances out. That leads to zero, okay? Now, country B, minus 32 on the current account,
Yeah.
minus 42 on the capital and financial account. So
So
those do
minus,
not, sorry?
that's
Sorry?
minus 74.
Yeah, minus 74 overall on the balance of payments, right? So that's how much
Yeah.
net errors and omissions is going to have to account for. What about C?
C is minus 15, minus 13, minus 28 in
Minus
total.
28. And what about D?
44 plus 37, no, what? 81.
81. So which one? Um, so yeah, so we get that's 12, 25, 37 versus 44, 81, 69. Okay. I was sorry, let's come back to this question. I just got I'm a bit frazzled at the moment. Um, okay, well, let's come back to this in a moment. Let me think through this. Right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, actually, let's have a look what the correct answer is. The correct answer is D. Okay. Oh, I mean that makes sense of what we were thinking, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
sorry, I'm kind of lost because you said that I shouldn't add up everything.
Okay. So we want these two sides. If I can put this there so you can see that. We want these two sides to balance out, right? If we've got our
Correct. Correct.
okay.
Yep.
So any surplus on the current account should be balanced by a negative
deficit.
on the capital account, a deficit, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I guess in essence it does just come down to adding them all up, but because of that's another way to do it. Sure. Sorry, I think this is why I'm getting so confused because you can just add them all up and then see, because it's not done in terms of net incomes and okay, minus 41. Yeah. If you sorry, you can just add them all up and see the difference.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, that was a really, really long-winded way to think through that. I guess I was trying to get it because this is yeah. So as long as you got this equation here, you can always figure it out. So the greatest disequilibrium is going to be obviously D, where the three added up are the greatest. But for example, these when you add them all up, the country B, it's a massive disequilibrium as well, all on the deficit side, but at an absolute level, not as big as these ones, right?
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm not sure. I got so confused by that. You can just add them all up. But do you understand this about the equations now?
Yep, I do.
Okay. And yeah, credit disequilibrium country. 23. Increase or decrease in exchange rates can take place in both a floating and fixed exchange rate system, but different terminology is used for each system. Okay, what do you think about this one?
Okay, so floating is when it's not controlled and fixed is when it is.
Okay.
So I went B because valuation kind of seems like I actually don't know what the correct terminology is, but this is just kind of like my working. Valuation is when you actually give it some sort of a value.
Yep.
So increased and fixed would be revaluation, and then decreased is just depreciation.
Yeah, very good.
Decrease in floating, sorry.
24.
Um, 24, so increase in the price of US goods sold in the UK. That would actually change things. Okay, wait. I would say 24C, the development of US substitutes for UK goods, because that decreases the demand for pound sterling.
Yeah. That's the only thing that's gonna affect those curves in that way, right? What
Yeah.
about the removal of UK tariffs against US goods?
Pardon?
What about the removal of UK tariffs against US goods?
That makes US goods cheaper. Oh wait, no. UK tariff. Yeah, it does make it cheaper, but that UK tariffs that's paid is not. It's not in the market per se, and
Okay,
that's
but
the other way around. If that makes sense, that would change the supply.
it would change what? Sorry, change supply. Yeah, change supply as well. It would change demand and supply most likely.
How would it change demand as well?
So demand for pounds would it wouldn't change demand. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so I'm very flustered. Yeah, you're right, because they would say within the market it's contained within there. So the consumers would already affect that it's their own currency, so it's not going to affect international demand for pound, right?
Yeah.
Maybe affected a little bit, but not hugely.
Okay.
And supply would be the main the main change there. Okay. Import prices and export prices of 4 countries between July 2013 and July 2014. Index of import prices. Okay. Index of export prices. Okay. Terms of trade.
Trade.
What's the formula for terms of trade?
What's the
Formula for terms of trade?
average export over average import prices?
Okay. Very good.
So I said C, Italy, and Spain.
Yep.
Because in Italy, import decreased, export increased. Spain, import decreased and export also decreased, but 111 over 110 is smaller than 109 over 106.
Very good. And did you find a quick way to do that, or do you just have to try all the numbers?
I just found decrease, increase,
Yeah.
so that works out for Italy. And then Spain was decrease, but then there's only like one difference between 110 and 111, and there's a 3 difference between 106 and 109, and I don't have to evaluate it because 106 is smaller than 110, so that 3 would actually make an even bigger difference.
Very good. Okay, country 26. Number 26, country X.
This is where I'm kind of confused about which one is which in terms of comparative and absolute.
Okay. So country X can produce apples and plums at a lower cost than country Y. Country X can also produce strawberries, but it costs more to do so than in country Y. In fact, country X only produces apples and trades them for plums and strawberries from country Y. What economic analysis could explain this pattern of trade? Okay.
Okay, so what I know is absolute advantage is when it can produce it more than both countries, well,
Okay.
in the other country, and then comparative is when it can produce it both with a lower opportunity cost than the other
Very good.
country.
I think
So,
we've done a little bit of work on this, I think. Yeah, so continue, please.
so that's kind of where I'm lost. Like the economic analysis, I do not understand. Like in terms of finding out if it's absolute or comparative.
Okay. So if I tell you if I give you these two definitions here, right? The
Yeah.
absolute advantage is countries specializing in the goods at which they're more efficient, so they can literally make cheaper than the other country. Whereas comparative advantage is specializing in the good in which you have a lower opportunity cost than the other country. Okay?
Yep.
So if we're looking at this now, country X can produce apples and plums at a lower cost than country Y. Country X can also produce strawberries, but it costs more to do so in country Y. So we know that country Y can make strawberries cheaper. There is absolute advantage in strawberries. And country X has absolute advantage in apples and plums. Agreed?
Yep.
So we're looking for one which says that country Y has absolute advantage in producing strawberries.
Understood. So that
And
would
that is the
be.
only one that works for that. But let's go into more detail and do the other side as well. Okay? So
Oh. Oh my God.
going to see?
Yeah, I realized. I,
Okay.
I realized why I was kind of confused why it wasn't A, and then I realized it said country X, and that would not work out.
Yeah.
Oh,
Whereas for comparative advantage, yeah, sure, country X can produce apples and plums cheaper. Oh, connection lost. Can you still hear me? Okay.
yeah.
So sure, country X can produce apples and plums cheaper than country Y.
Uh-huh.
But there's a possibility that the opportunity cost of country Y making them, because country X can make apples so cheaply, that there's a chance for comparative advantage actually it being better for country Y to produce them because it has a much lower opportunity cost of making them. Yep.
Makes sense now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, as long as you remember these two definitions, then you can always do it. Okay, and I think that is the correct answer as well. Let's just confirm with the marginal. 26C. Very good.
Okay, so 27 wants to use
Okay.
protection to improve its trade performance and to raise government revenue. I said D, raising tariffs on imported goods. So raising quotas on imported goods defeats both purposes because
Okay.
then imports become more expensive
Yep.
and they get no revenue from it.
Yep.
Subsidies on exported goods, uh, it doesn't increase revenue,
Yep.
but it increases trade performance.
Yep.
Using tariffs on exported goods is just, it's, I don't know, it's just stupid. Raises government revenue, but destroys trade performance.
Yep.
And then D would be my thing.
Raising tariffs and on imported goods. So then you get both your trade performance and your government revenue. 28.
Okay, so public sector, so receive poor inspections. Government ceased to pay the college money that it usually used as its annual. So annual grant, that would be supply side policies.
Very good.
So now we're looking at like B, C, or D. And then because you have expenditure, it would be B or C, but then there's no monetary side to it. So just B.
Okay. I Agree. Yeah, no monetary is tied to it because what kind of stuff comes under monetary policy?
Exchange rates and money supply.
Very good. And sorry, so not exchange rates, interest rates more likely.
Oh, where does exchange rate go then?
Okay, yeah, so exchange rates would come under monetary policy, but you can't set exchange rates. Unless so only some economies can set exchange rates. So basically, you have to make this decision. They call it a trilemma between capital. Okay, this is a quick because we've got a bit of time, so we'll do a bit of further thinking. Okay. So we know that there's this idea of hot money, right? Can you explain what hot money is?
Kind of know what it is, but I don't know the exact wording.
Okay. So it's this idea that interest rates changing could lead to is it coming back? Okay, so it's basically that massive institutional investors like pension funds and asset managers, they want the highest interest rates for their savings. So if the interest rate in the UK suddenly falls, that's going to be positive for aggregate demand, right? Sorry?
So they move it quickly and quite frequently.
Yeah, exactly. So then they buy lots of US dollars and then save their money in a US bank where the interest rates are higher.
Yeah.
And then, oh, look, Japan raises interest rates. And they move their money to yen and then save it in Japanese bank accounts. And this has massive effects on the supply and demand of currency, right? So that affects the exchange rates. Okay? So you can affect exchange rates. Oh, sorry, you can affect interest rates, right? So you can affect interest rates. You can affect okay. So there's these three things which we can choose between: interest rates, raising and lowering them, exchange rates, capital controls, right? So let's say you wanted to lower your interest rate, but you also wanted to keep your exchange rate really strong. If you lower your interest rate, then loads of people are going to supply your currency, and that's going to weaken your currency, right? But you want to keep your currency strong. Well, then what you have to do is you have to bring in capital controls, okay? You know what they are?
Pardon? Sorry?
Do you know what capital controls are?
No, I do not.
Okay, so capital controls are limits on how much money you can move in and out of the country. So you tell institutional investors, sorry, you can't exchange your money. So it's very, very rarely have this. It's very anti-free market. For example, China has very, very strong capital controls. It's very difficult to move Chinese currency into other countries and to move it out of the country. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And this means that they can have a very low interest rate and also a very strong currency, which normally wouldn't work with the hot money, due to hot money. Okay? Let's say you don't want capital controls. If you don't have capital controls, if you want to, increase your exchange rate, what's that going to mean? That's going to mean selling off lots of other currencies and buying up lots of your dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want capital controls. Well, then the only way that that's going to work without affecting, without running out of funds and things like that, is if you have a fixed interest rate. So then you could, lower the interest rate, and that could increase your currency. But then you have to have free capital controls, money moving in and out. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want, you can only ever have one to be, free and led by the free market, okay? So and you always have to have one. You can't control all three. You can't have capital controls and interest rate and exchange rates set. So most countries try to be as free market as possible. They set interest rates, they allow their exchange rates to float, and they don't have many capital controls. China sometimes tries to have all three, but then that doesn't work, and it leads to a lot of financial instability because then interest rates can be radically lower, and lots of big asset managers and stuff are trying to find ways to move their money in or out of the country, and leads to a lot of instability. Basically, if you want stability, then you've got to choose two of these, and you can set them. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah. So monetary policy. We can't really affect our exchange rate radically in the UK. But we can set interest rates, and that comes under monetary policy. So it's things like quantitative easing as well. So unconventional monetary policy. So interest rates and QE are the main types of monetary policy, and then possibly also capital controls and exchange rates. Okay.
Yep.
Whereas, as you know, fiscal is government spending and taxes, and supply side is anything. Okay. Small balance of treatments. Let's do this perfectly this time. Which measure to correct a balance of payments current account deficit would be classified as an expenditure dampening policy? What do you think?
A would not be expenditure dampening because it would cause people to spend more.
Okay.
Revaluation is basically like appreciating. I just keep turning it to something I understand. So imports would be cheaper, but so they'd tend to spend more. It would reduce the deficit, but they'd spend more. And so I would say C.
Why would it reduce the deficit?
Pardon? Why would it?
Reduce the deficit.
Because then the currency is stronger, so imports are cheaper.
Okay. So what's going to happen to the deficit?
The deficit is going to decrease.
If imports are cheaper?
Oh no, it could increase.
It
It could increase, yeah. Okay, yeah. So then they'll end up buying more of those. Okay, yeah. I thought what my thinking was the quantity would stay the same, but then the price would reduce.
Yep. And so it would make things worse, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
Okay. And then you think it's C. What's wrong with D?
Foreign exchange controls. Honestly speaking, I did not completely understand that, and C worked out perfectly, so I just went with C.
Yeah, exactly. And C is the correct answer as well. Increase in direct taxes is going to mean that you have less income, so you're going to spend less on imports, right? Foreign exchange controls are things like how easy it is to move money in and out of the country. That's not just going to affect imports, that's also going to affect exports. So it's definitely expenditure dampening, but it's not necessarily going to have a positive effect on the deficit. Okay? Very good. Whereas C is a very obvious answer there. Okay, 30. A government is faced with rising inflation. It wishes to reduce inflationary pressure while avoiding a rise in unemployment. Okay, so have you heard of the Phillips Curve?
I don't think so.
Okay, so the Phillips Curve is a very famous relationship in economics, which basically says that you have to choose between low inflation, high unemployment, or high unemployment, low inflation. If you think about it from the supply side, then the lower that inflation is going to get, how's that going to affect SRAS? Sorry, the lower unemployment gets, how's that going to affect SRAS?
The lower unemployment?
Yeah.
Lower unemployment is the SRS like shifts to the right.
Yeah, exactly. So SRS is shifting right. We're getting that's demand. We're getting closer.
But LRS stays in the same place though.
Yeah, LRS stays there. So we're getting closer and closer to that zero unemployment, right?
Yep.
And the closer we get there, the more that costs are going to rise. It's going to get more expensive for companies to hire people. Wage rates are going to go up the lower the unemployment is. And then that's just going to mean like increase in the cost of factory production. So Phillips says that, the lower unemployment gets, the higher inflation is going to go. And we've seen that a little bit in the UK, where we have a historically low unemployment rate, and inflation has really started to creep up. So you measured at 2.7%. So yeah, okay. So that's the relationship usually that Phillips identified, and I think you'll go into more detail on that next year. Okay, which action is most likely to meet its needs? What do you think?
I said B.
Okay.
So an increase in employment taxes, then you're more likely going to get cost plus inflation.
Yep.
Budget surplus, then budget surplus is like might get higher taxes and things. No, right?
Yep.
And then D, increase in the exchange rate. That's gonna do the exact same, like balance of payments and cause more competition. Would
Yeah,
it?
exactly. So this is
That, that would cause like a rise in unemployment if they tend to get more imports.
yeah, more imports, less exports. So AD falls, so lower unemployment, higher unemployment.
Yeah.
This is the same thing here, right? This is fiscal policy, contractionary fiscal policy reducing AD. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So the only one that really works is an increase in laws promote competition. That's going to mean that prices are lower because firms have to compete more. And if they have to compete more, then there's a possibility there's going to be less monopolies, so more people working in different companies, so unemployment can even fall further. Okay. What is the argument against increasing competition and how that affects inflation? Why do some people say that monopolies are a good thing to have in terms of
Because
price?
then they can experience economies of scale.
Yeah, very good. If you have loads and loads of competition, this is what
And
longer average cost.
they'll have like a larger capital.
Yeah,
They'll have more capital to invest in R&D.
yeah. There's two things there. So there's one: if you force all the companies to operate here, then you get higher prices than one company operating over there. This is longer than average cost, and this is quantity. And at the same time, you've got this idea of dynamic efficiency, which you've just mentioned, that the massive amounts of monies that monopolies earn, because they want to stay on top of the market, they want to keep their monopoly, they're going to reinvest that into research and development, creating new products and lowering the average cost in the long run. Just like Microsoft, spends so much on developing new products and making things cheaper and cheaper to stay on top.
Yeah.
If it was perfectly competitive, then that wouldn't be any money left for that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's quickly hop back up to that this balance of payments question here. And yeah, so either you can just add them all up, or you can work out using these formulas. And then that leads to the biggest answer, the biggest disequilibrium being this one here, right? So net errors and emissions are going to be largest for country D. Do you have any more questions on this? Sorry about
I
getting
do not know. Everything's been answered.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything else which you'd like to cover today?
Nothing right now. Could you give me like a minute max? I'll quickly go run upstairs and get a few questions that I have problems with
Sure.
from other multiple choice questions. Okay, would it be possible if you can open up Winter 15, question paper 1-3?
Sorry, which sprint is that?
I don't know if it's in the sprint.
Do you know if it's on Trello?
I don't know if it's on Trello. I'll just try finding the link to it and then sending that to you. Winter 15, question paper 1-3. Sent it to you on Slack. It will be from Tom's email account. Oops.
Is this an essay paper or
It's a multiple choice paper. So that will be question 3 that I had a problem with. So my thing was, why was it? And so the answer is C, the question, and I was confused why it's not B and why is it C.
Okay. So, give it a quick read. Okay. So, let's start the marginal cost curve. Do you understand where this is flat?
Yes. You pay the same price for every single trip.
Very good. And what about the marginal benefit? Do you understand why that's downward sloping?
Because after each trip, you don't really feel that willing to go on another one. Like it's not as fresh.
Yeah, exactly. We call this diminishing marginal returns, don't we?
Yep.
And we see that for a large number of goods. Okay. So as long as the marginal benefit of going is above the marginal cost, you're going to want to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for we have a benefit, we have a cost, and this is 1 and this is 2. So the benefit here, right, is that much, and it only costs you that much, so you get all this extra. Then here, benefit is that much, and you'll get all this extra benefit. Okay?
Oh yeah, because it's
You see?
okay. It's not total, it's like the marginal.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it's the total area. And you always go up to where you're indifferent. That's just the thing you got to remember. It's up until the indifferent point. Okay? Strictly, I think you've got an argument for being correct. Okay, shall I show you why? Because what is the assumption that I've made here? I've made the assumption that cinema tickets, going to the trips, is a continuous product. Okay?
Yeah.
If it weren't continuous, what would that curve look like? It would look like something like this. Where if you go once, you get that much happiness. If you go twice, you get that much happiness. If you go 3 times, you get that much happiness, right?
Yeah.
But in this question, we've assumed it to be, and this is what the curve looked like. Boom, boom, boom. That's what it would look like, okay?
That's how I saw it.
Yeah. But this question is assumed that it's a continuous good for simplification. And therefore, you're going to get this extra benefit up until the indifferent point. Okay?
Okay.
Cool. So I think you're overthinking it, or you're being too realistic about it. It's economics. It's not going to be realistic. Yep. Happy with that?
Yeah, I'm very happy with that. Okay, next question would be question 9.
9. Okay, what did you think?
So I thought it would be D.
Okay.
Wait, no. Quantity supplied. I thought it would be. Okay, so here's kind of where I thought it would be D because it would be an increase
Okay.
in quantity supplied. That would be a shift in that. But then I saw 1 and I thought it had to be 1 and 3, but then both of them were not there.
Okay.
So that's
So
kind of where I got lost, but yeah.
yeah, this is quite a tricky question, isn't it? So what is the correct answer? Is the correct answer D?
Correct answer is C.
C, 1 only. Okay.
Oh, sorry, B, 2 and 3.
B, 2. Oh, 2 and 3. Okay.
2 and 3. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It is C.
C, 1 only.
1 only, C.
Okay. Which shows an increase in the quantity supplied? Quantity supplied is increased. Quantity supplied has increased there as well. Okay, I haven't seen something like this before. Is this CIE as well?
Yes, this is CIE.
Okay.
It's just a different paper.
Okay. So I think, well, this is very strange wording, because what they seem to be implying is that increase in quantity supplied, they're only talking about a movement along the curve, right?
Okay.
Here, obviously, there's no change in supply. This is a shift of the supply curves. Change in the market for good, which shows an increase in the quantity supplied. Okay, so I think, yeah, I'm not completely sure why it wouldn't be 3 as well.
Okay.
They've just defined an increase in the quantity supplied as only being a movement along the curve. I've never seen that before, but it might be worth looking at other papers to see if they do that again, because that would make things a whole lot trickier if that's how they define that bit, because that seems to be quite contradictory to some of the other questions they're asking. Okay, I'll have a look into that as well for you for the next week. Okay, this is question 9 from the question 9 from the ones. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll look into that as well. Any other questions from this paper?
The next question is question 26.
Okay. And I bet for this question they'll end up giving marks for all the answers, or at least for part D. So often what you'll see, I don't know if you've looked through the mark schemes or the examiners' reports, then often you'll see them saying, in the end, because of unclear wording, we gave answers for we said 2 answers or 3 answers were correct.
Okay.
I've done that for this paper. Okay, 26. Sorry.
Yes, 26. Let me actually look at the correct mark scheme now. Okay. 26 is B.
Okay. The capital value of a non-interest bearing asset is index linked. Okay, this is quite complicated.
Okay, that threw me off immediately.
Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, you can untie it. It's all about just taking its stone and untying it, right? Non-interest bearing asset. Okay, so it's just an asset which has a fixed value. It doesn't pay you dividends or anything. It's just the asset you can buy or sell it. And it is index linked. You know what we mean by index linked?
Like inflation and things, the index.
Yeah. So the capital value of this asset, this is clearly a financial asset, and it's connected to the index. So if inflation is 2%, then its nominal price rises by 2%. Okay.
Yeah.
So and they should have made this clear, but because there's lots of indexes, but whenever something is called index linked, that means it's linked to the index of inflation, CPI, RPI, whatever you want. Okay.
Yeah.
So how will that mean it's money value and real value change? Well, money value just means nominal value. So it's, you know what nominal means, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So that's going to rise, but its real value is going to stay constant with inflation. Happy?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's just really, yeah, it's just non-interest bearing. I don't even know why they had to put that in there, but okay. I guess because some things like a mortgage as an asset, because mortgage is an asset at a bank, right? Because it's an interest bearing asset. Um, that's gonna go down in value over time as the mortgage gets paid off. So by making it clear that it's a non-interest bearing asset, you know that it's not going to have any repayments. It's not going to amortize is the word for a financial asset getting smaller because of repayments. And you know it's index linked. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, technical knowledge there. Have you heard of amortization?
I have not heard of that.
Okay, yeah. Amortization is the when the value of the mortgage goes down because it's being paid off gradually. This is non-interest bearing, so it's a zero amortization or bullet repayment asset. Bullet repayment means it's all paid back on the last day, no interest beforehand. Okay.
Yeah.
They're bonds. Bonds are obviously interest-bearing assets, and often they can be interest-linked. So a very revolutionary financial product was the TIPS, which was the U.S. Treasury Index Protected Security, and that was a bond given by the U.S. government, which gives a very, very low interest rate, but it adjusts itself for inflation. So very, very clever financial instrument for people who were scared of inflation at the time, and it made the US government a lot of money, which it could spend, and now has to repay back. Okay. Any other questions on this paper?
Nothing else on this paper. Um,
Sometimes I think they are just quite unfair about these questions. Like I feel like you're at the stage where if it's a reasonable question, you get it right 100% of the time. And now it's always just those 2-3 questions where the wording's a bit dodgy, or it's something you haven't heard of before that you're losing the marks. But yeah, I think it's just reading around a bit, reading around what the topic means, finding out what index link means, even if you've never heard that term before, that kind of thing.
okay.
Any final questions on anything on this paper?
Nothing else.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I'll go and have a look at what's up with question 9. I also want to find a better way to explain question 15 to you from the paper. That was this one here about why it's just A and not B to do with to the government subsidy. So yeah, I'll come back to you next week with those two questions. Hopefully, explain a bit better.
That is awesome.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. So Adarsh, do I just need to stop broadcast and then?
Yep. Stop broadcast over there, and you're all set.
Okay.